competitive cyclist.
Oh.
Or was a competitive cyclist. Back when he was young. Now he's so old.
I was super old.
Yeah. Like you.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Thank you, babe.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No, I don't know. So
Yeah, they're first year.
First year?
First year.
What are you taking? Engineering? Yeah. All right. So we've got a number of labs for human kinetics recreation. This larger space is mostly a teaching space. So students, undergrad students will be down here doing anatomy labs, exercise physiology, biomechanics, motor learning, human growth and development. I think that's most of that. Maybe fitness. We've got a couple of fitness different courses at the second year level and at the advanced level as well. So they can come down here and doing some fitness testing, etc. So not much to look at the moment here, but what we try to do is we try to set up separate stations. So if we try to keep the labs down to about 20 students, and if we have 4 stations, then we'd have 5 students at each station. And therefore what we could do is we'd have, like, say, one student run the computer. Let's say we're doing a experiment or lab on the treadmill, then we'd have one person on the treadmill, one person would be running the treadmill, one person would be collecting the data, and then whatever the 5th one would be doing. So hopefully everybody would be involved in the lab, and then you switch around and everybody has a different responsibilities. So that's the usual setup. And so in terms of like exercise physiology, we'd have labs that would look at cardiovascular parameters, so aerobic activity and anaerobic activity, high intensity versus moderate intensity. We'd have muscle strength labs. Again, we look at fatigue, we looked at potentiation, so increasing strength. There's a body fat composition lab. There's all sorts of different parameters that we look at. And so anything of interest, I think this is just storage back here for the most part. Yeah, this is just storage. We have a bunch of, there's a new bike that we have here that's electronically calibrated, and so we can have individuals work on it and look at their power output and have different types of resistances that they can do. And the cheaper bikes in the back, and when I say cheaper, they're probably only $600 or $1,000, whereas this one's like $15,000.
Jesus.
So it's pretty expensive.
Pocket change.
Yeah, it's just pocket change. And we've also got not only, so if not just lower body, we can do upper body work as well, so we can monitor the work output and power output of individuals. Let's say a person's paralyzed from the waist down, and they can only work by upper body, then we can do this. And of course, for able-bodied people as well, we can look at their upper body versus lower body power outputs.
Right, nice. So is that a bike more expensive than the one in the other lab over there? Because I know
it's similar to the one in the other lab. It's just newer.
Oh.
That one would have been about the same, but it's probably 10 years old now.
Thanks.
You're saying just collecting data?
Yeah, well, there's one in there about it. We'll go in.
Oh, I was wondering what that was.
All right. So in this lab here, Dr. Bassett normally works in this lab. He does a lot of metabolic type of work. So he'll look at, for instance, there's a right here. So right here we've got a metabolic system. We've got about 3 different metabolic systems. So you can monitor a person's aerobic capacity, and then look at what's called their RQ, the respiratory quotient, which will tell you, are they working more aerobically or anaerobically? Are they using more fats, or are they using more carbohydrates? So we can do a lot of different experiments. I had one student do an experiment here where we had them listening to music, and in another condition not listening to music, and then see if they could go longer with the distraction of music, whether there's a change in metabolism when they listen to music, a variety of different things like that. We also throw people into cold water. All right. And so we have a thermoregulatory system here, and you could make it hot water, but of course for Newfoundland, so it's usually cold water. So again, Fabien has done some work in that, and we had some other profs who were more into ergonomics and looked into that. You looking for something, James?
No, I'm just saying it's all, the lab's all yours.
Okay, you're all finished?
Yeah, we're all finished. Do you want me to keep everything on? Or?
No, you can turn it off.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just talk about it. What we also do is it's this. Now this is just another metabolic system somewhere. Oh, right here. This system here is for hypoxia. You know what hypoxia means? Hypo means less than, oxia is oxygen, so lower oxygen levels. So what we can do with this is we can, so you may have heard of Dr. T.A. Loeffler. She climbs a lot of mountains. So she has used this for her training. She's climbed every mountain, or climbed the highest mountain on each continent, but she's tried Everest 3 times, but hasn't made it. So that's the only one that's stopped her. But anyway, so she would train on this, and so your normal concentration of oxygen in the air is 20.96%. So that's what we're breathing right now. So you can turn this down to 15%, 12%, 10%, and then force a person to work at lower oxygen levels. So if you were a elite athlete who did a lot of aerobic work, and you wanted to try and build up your hemoglobin, then what you might try to do is you might work at lower oxygen levels to put stress on your body, and thereby force the body to accumulate more hemoglobin. Now what they normally do that works the best is what's called live high, train low. Because what happens is when you start training with low oxygen, you can't work as hard. So your training program turns out to be crappy because you're always tired. But what you can do, and they do it at many Olympic sites around the world, including Canada, is that they'll have you live in these rooms or these tents that are hypoxic. So you'll watch TV, you'll eat, you'll sleep in a room that has only 15% oxygen or 12% oxygen. And then when you go train, you go outside and then you train in the normal 21% oxygen. So you have great workouts, and yet, let's say 14 hours a day, your body's subjected to low oxygen, and then it feels like it has to produce more hemoglobin. Then you go to your competition, and now you've got much more hemoglobin, and obviously you can go for a longer period of time. And it's not illegal, like blood doping would be. So this is a legal way of doing that.
So how much would that cost?
That's probably like $20,000, $25,000,
Jesus.
something like that.
So the ones for the elite athletes, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, so obviously you'd need a much bigger system to decrease the oxygen in the whole room.
Right. So does she wear like a mask or what?
Yeah, for this you'd wear a mask. So there's so you could have this if you're lying down. He's also done experiments with obese individuals.
Okay.
And when you're under hypoxic conditions, your metabolism goes up. So in this lab here, we do a variety of different things. The big guy that just left, he's one of our grad students. He's looking at the excitability of the motor neurons, so the neurons in your spinal cord. And we use this device here. You've seen this before? So this is a rotor massager, so you roll it on your muscles, and it tends to give you a greater range of motion, and it can also decrease pain. So what we're looking at is why will this work? Because other people call this self-myofascial release is the term that they use, because you've got this fascia, this connective tissue over your muscle, and people have always said, oh, what you're doing is that you're releasing the tension in that fascia. But it takes a lot of force to be able to do that, and most people wouldn't be strong enough to do it. So what we've done in our experiments is we've seen, for instance, we've measured the pain in this calf, and we would take the rotor and roll that calf to see if we decrease the pain, and it did. So then you could argue, okay, well, what you're doing is you're releasing these trigger points. But then what we did is we rolled the opposite calf, and we measured this calf. This calf didn't get pain. It reduced in pain. So you didn't even have to touch the calf, and you got a reduction in pain. So obviously it has nothing to do with breaking down anything if you can do the other side of your body and you reduce pain.
Yeah.
So it's more of a nervous system kind of thing going on. And then James, the big guy, is looking at a way to look at the excitability of the system while you're rolling and after you're rolling. And so this is a typical small setup that we have here. So for instance, typically we're going to have one of you guys do it as well, but you'd be sitting up here and we might want to measure, for instance, the knee extension force. So we would stick electrodes on the muscle to measure the activity. We would have a strain gauge back here to measure the force. And then that would be attached to the BioPack system that we have here. And so this BioPack system is a series of amplifiers that will take the forces and the volts that are generated from the forces in the EMG, amplify them, put them on the software, again, which you'll see in the other room. And so we can do, each system can handle 16 channels. So you could do 16 different muscles if you wanted to. Or what we typically would do would be, measure the force of one muscle and then look at one joint and then measure, maybe 3 or 4 different muscles associated with that movement. This device over here measures, it's a goniometer, and it measures range of motion. So we would have people and we would have them lift their legs as high as they could, or we would lift them for them. And we do a lot of stretching studies, so we can measure the change in the range of motion they'd have with a certain type of a stretching study. And it would also measures time, so then we can just divide the range of motion by time and get the velocity of the movement as well. The deal in the back, this is for proprioception. Proprioception means where is your body in space. So for instance, if I stand here, with my eyes open, I can obviously touch my nose because I can see my arms. But if I close my eyes, I can still touch my nose. And why is that? Well, because there's organs inside my muscles that tell me where my joints are in space. And so what we do with this one here is, again, you can do all sorts of different types of interventions. It might be we do a fatigue intervention, really fatigue the arms, fatigue this arm, and then we tell the person, okay, we have you go and do 90 degrees. All right, we fatigue the arm, now close your eyes, now bring it back to 90 degrees. And there's a goniometer on here that will tell us, well, last time they got to like 89.6 degrees, this time they're at 82 degrees. So because of the fatigue, they're off by 8 degrees. And then of course it can tell us they're off by 8 degrees before it, or 8 degrees afterwards, or then we can match the other side as well. We do a lot of work with what's called non-local effects. So non-local effects are, if you fatigue this leg, you think, okay, this leg's going to get tired. But this leg gets tired too. So we'll just tire this leg and then measure this one, and we'll see the force go down. We'll get this leg tired and we'll measure this muscle. The elbow flexors will get tired from your leg being tired. If you do stretching of your shoulders, your lower body becomes more flexible. If you stretch your hamstrings, your shoulders become more flexible. So there's a great interconnectivity in terms of the nervous system, in terms of fatigue, flexibility, and now we're looking at potentiation. If we can do some exercises that will excite the system, can that excite the system on the other side as well? So we're doing a lot of that lately. Yes. That big chair over there, we haven't used that in a while, but, and I don't know why the little swimming pool is there, but what we did look at for a while is the effects of inversion. So this thing here, I'm not going to pull it out, but with this wheel, you can pull these pins out and then flip this chair 360 degrees. And so you'd say to yourself, well, why the hell would you do that? Well, why the hell we do that is, of course, if you're going to go out to Terra Nova, Hibernia, you've got to take a course, and in that course, you've got to get in a helicopter out in Holyrood, and then what they'll do is they'll flip the helicopter upside down in a pool, and they teach you how to get out of there because the helicopter ditches under safe conditions, not like the conditions it was it 10 years ago when the people died. But normally what should happen, they should be able to go down slowly, but of course a helicopter is top heavy, so they tend to flip over even though they do have some flotation devices. So what I was thinking is that when you're upside down and all the blood's rushing to your head, how does that affect your force output and your activation? So we have this device made so we could take people and we test them upright, upper body, lower body. Okay, what's their force? What's the activation of their muscles? Heart rate, blood pressure. And then we flip them upside down, and when they're upside down, then they got to do it again and see what happens. And just as we thought, what would happen is that the forces were decreased and activation is decreased because of the stress on the nervous system when you're upside down. But one interesting thing that we didn't expect was when we looked at heart rate and blood pressure, we also thought that when you're upside down and all the blood's rushing to your head and to your upper body, that your blood pressure would shoot way up. Your blood pressure actually shoots down when you do that. And being engineers, you probably have no idea why, but I'll tell you. Because you've got these little receptors in your neck, and they detect the amount of pressure in your system. And so when you get upside down and all the blood goes to your head, you engorge these arteries with blood, you increase the pressure for a short period of time, and those receptors say, hey, the blood pressure is really high, and it tries to decrease your blood pressure in response to the high blood pressure you just had. So you actually end up with, within 5 seconds that happens. Within 5 seconds your blood pressure drops and your heart rate drops. So that was a kind of interesting thing to find out, which could, might be something to consider when you're talking about rehab and cardiac patients and that sort of thing.
Nice.
So that's neurophysiology. So they've got a device right here. And what this does is that you put this paddle over the person's top of their head. You have in your brain a part of it that's called the motor cortex. So all the neurons that allow your muscles to move, there's particular neurons along a strip of brain here and a strip of brain there. So if we want to activate all the muscles on this side, then we can generally stick it on the opposite side because things go across your body, and then all the muscles on this side would start to contract. But they would only contract for a very short period of time. And what we can do is, again, we can provide some intervention to see with fatigue, or they like to do cycling, and to see, is the brain more excitable or less excitable when we do cycling with the hands versus cycling with the feet, or is it more excitable when your arms are in this position versus this position, or are they more excitable when your hands are pronated versus supinated versus neutral, versus fast pedaling versus slow pedaling, etc., etc., etc. So there's all sorts of things you can look at. And then of course that's related to your walking, because when you're walking you have a central motor command. You think, I have to think about walking, but we could cut your brains off and your body would still walk. They do that in cats and mice and rats. Now of course we'd have to do something to keep you alive for a little while, but you'd still have this central generator in your spinal cord that makes you walk the way you do. You'd walk a bit more clumsily without a head, but you'd still have that coordination. So you have a similar kind of central generator for your upper body as well. And so we can look at upper body versus lower body and see the differences in excitability of the brain and the spinal cord. Nice. So it gives you a nice this is a transcranial magnetic stimulation. So it's a magnetic stimulation that causes an excitation, and then we've got stimulators that will give you electrical stimulation. So we can use this to look at the brain, and then we can stick some electrodes in the back of your head and then put the electrical stimulation in, and then compare what happens in your brain to your spinal cord to your muscle. And so whatever we want to do, then we can say, oh well, when we do this, the brain gets excited, the spinal cord gets inhibited, and the muscle gets excited. Or maybe the brain gets inhibited, spinal cord gets excited, muscle gets excited, or something. And that'll again tell us about how the system is working in terms of movement or whatever intervention we want to do.
Nice.
Any questions so far? I know I'm talking pretty fast here.
guys need any volunteers to test them?
All the time. Yeah, all the time.
As always.
We'll get your email from you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. We also have some really old stuff. So this is almost embarrassing to look at, but this is the oldest piece of equipment that we have. It's from the 1960s. And what we do with this thing is we measure reaction time and movement time. So we would have a person, for instance, put their hand on the blue button, and they got to watch for the lights. When the lights go on, they have to go as quickly as possible to the red button. And so the two ancient clocks here would then tell you, after the light went on, how long did it take you to take your finger off the blue? And then there's a couple clocks on these guys and tell you how long it took to go from blue to red. Like I say, it's ancient, but it works, so we still use it. So right now we're gonna have some undergrads doing a project where they're doing some high intensity contractions of their quadriceps, and then we want to see if that, we know that's going to excite the quadriceps on that side, but will it excite the quadriceps on the other side? So then what we do is we test them for force, and we also test them, we put that on the floor, and we do reaction time with their feet to see if we can increase the speed of movement on the other side that's not even exercised.
Thanks.
All right. You got the focus on underneath there?
Yeah.
You want to do a quick subject? Come on in.
All right.
So we'll show you how the system works. I just need to take a little bit of hair off of your legs so that the electrodes go on. So we're going to go on your right side. Pull that up to, yeah, that's good. So you're not that hairy, so it's not that bad. Nobody's going to notice. Okay, I'm going to give him a wipe.
This is the best part.
You guys did this for that other thing too?
Yeah.
So what we're doing here is that when we're sticking the electrodes on, if you're really hairy, then of course there's going to be a distance between the electrode and the skin.
Yeah.
So the signal is not going to be very good. So we got to get rid of that hair. Then you're going to have, everybody has dandruff. Well, dandruff is just dead skin cells. You don't have dandruff just in your head. You have dandruff all over your body. Of course, you notice it on your head because it gets caught in your hair and then accumulates and falls off and makes your shoulders look bad. So you've got dandruff falling off your legs all the time, but you just don't notice.
Yeah.
So when we take the hair off, we will also be taking some of the dead skin cells off, which again will decrease resistance so that we can get the electrodes closer to the skin and to the muscle. Then of course you also sweat, so there's going to be oils on your skin. So we got to take away those oils because as the electrical signal from the muscle comes out, if there's oil, then it gets spread. So we take the oil away, then again the signal will be going more directly to the electrodes. So normally we would measure and make sure we know exactly where they're going. Today it doesn't really matter. We know that's a muscle. Oh, we need a ground electrode. So when we're measuring EMG, we are comparing what's happening in an active spot with an inactive spot. So this is inactive. Okay, for inactive, maybe here, no. Anyway, we're going to stick it more on a bone right here because we know the bone's not going to be sending any signals.
So which one did you set up?
Yeah, just the first one. Yeah.
The red one is on top.
No, it doesn't have to.
Okay.
No, doesn't matter. Okay. You sit down here.
Wait till I'm putting this in.
And sit, whoops, you can't sit back so your knees are, there we go. Good. So all we're doing right now is going to measure the electrical activity of your muscle, but sometimes what we do is we actually have a stimulator, and then we'll stimulate your muscle, so that you just sit there and the machine will stimulate it for you. But usually that's a bit painful, and we're not going to do that to you today. So what we're going to show you is the kind of output that we would get. So down here we're going to have the force output, so what's coming out of your the force out of your leg, and here's going to be the EMG. So just relax right now. Start. Okay, give us a little contraction, push out. Okay. Harder, harder. Okay, and one more time. Okay, relax. Alright, so if I go like so. Alright, so that's actually perfect. I didn't have to ask you. So what you did a small amount of force, a medium amount of force, and a bit more than a medium amount of force there, whatever. And then what you notice, this is the EMG activity. So what's happening for you to make force, you got to send a signal from your brain down your spinal cord, and then you've got to make a decision about how much force am I going to make. So if you're only going to make a small amount of force, give me a guess. How many muscle fibers do you think you have in your quadriceps?
There's 4 muscles.
4 muscles, yeah.
A lot.
A lot. That's a good guess. Engineering guy. You have about 100,000 fibers, and up to 250,000 fibers in your quadriceps. So then you've got each motor neuron in your spinal cord innervates or attaches to anywhere from 1,000 or more fibers. So let's say you have 100,000 fibers, and that would mean that on average you probably have about 100 neurons in your back firing to make your quadriceps contract. So when you did a little force, you got a little bit of electricity coming out. So what probably happened, again, let's say you have, I just said you had about 1,000 motor neurons. Maybe you only recruited 50, I don't know if I said 1,000, yeah. So maybe you only recruited 50 of them there. And so you had 50 neurons firing, and then they activated 1,000 each, so it activated maybe 5,000 muscle fibers. And then you did a bit more. Well, in order to do more, you got to activate more fibers. So then maybe you had 100 or 1,000, whatever, I can't remember my numbers. But what you do is you keep on recruiting more and more motor neurons as you try to get more and more force. And therefore you end up, we can measure the amount of electricity coming out of your muscle, and that'll give us an idea of the recruitment of motor neurons. You're also going to fire them at different frequencies. So if you do a very fast contraction, it's usually going to be a higher frequency compared to a slow contraction as a low frequency, and that will also contribute to that signal right there. And we can actually break that down and look at the frequency of the signal as well to tell us about frequency versus recruitment. So what I'm going to do is I want you, do I have that set up? P57 position, 47. Okay, I'm going to show you what happens when you get tired. So I'm going to let the computer go on for about 2 seconds. Then I want you to push it out as hard as you can, and I want you to hold it for 30 seconds. All right? Are you ready to do that?
Yep.
Okay. Remember, hard as you can for 30 seconds. And you're going to start now. Push it, keep on pushing. Go, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Come on, you can do it, keep it going. Gotta go hard all the time. That's only 10 seconds. Come on, you got 20 seconds more. Keep it going.
Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Come on,
Let's go.
let's go.
Come on, Wes.
Come on, don't give up. That's 20 seconds. You got 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds. Do it. Do it. Come on. Come on. 6 more seconds. 6 more seconds. 4.
Come on, Wes. Come on, come on, come on.
2, 1. Stop. Okay. All right. Good effort. Oh, we didn't record it. You gotta do it again. Okay, so perfect. You are physiologically perfect. You're exactly what I want to demonstrate. So you start off here. You're up to about 600 newtons. We can measure that exactly. We just get the cursor, go like that. So you started off. Do we have P to P anywhere? So you were at 613 newtons, which is really good for a little girl. Just kidding. All right. And then, because Camilla gets like 1,000 or so.
I'm strong.
Yeah. Just kidding. And then you drop down to 463. So you drop down by 20 to 60, about 40% you dropped. All right. But look at this. So when you started, you had a large amount of EMG activity. When we say a large amount, we look at the amplitude of the signal and the density, and then see what happens. See how it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So what's happening there? What do you think? Why is the EMG activity getting smaller and smaller? Yeah, of course you're going to say I'm tired, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. Of course you're tired, but because you're tired, what's happening to your motor neurons? What did I say? When you had more and more force, what happened to your motor neurons?
They had more of them started working.
That's right, you recruited more motor neurons. What's happening here?
You're recruiting less.
You're turning them off, right? As they get tired. So what's happening? You've got fast twitch and slow twitch fibers in your leg. It's dependent upon your parents. You could have a lot of fast twitch and very little slow twitch, all depending on what you got from your mother and father and your grandfather, that sort of thing. But the fast twitch fibers are fast, but they're fatiguable quickly. So what's going to happen, you're going to pop out a lot of force. You brought it up quickly, so there's a lot of fast twitch fibers there, and then they fatigue, and then they turn off. And start turning off and turning off and turning off. And then you see that you notice it gets to around here, and then stays around the same size. So when you get down to predominantly slow twitch fibers, which last a long time, they take a long while to turn off. So what it would probably be is, it probably took you about 20 seconds to turn off a lot of your fast twitch and start relying more on your slow twitch. Right? And then of course, then you kind of died at the end there. That's a lot smaller than that. Right? So this is a typical thing that we would look at in terms of our research. And then, like I said before, what we would do is we'd have people fatigue that leg, and then we would test this leg that wasn't tired. And I can tell you that that leg is probably tired now because of doing this. And it could be for a number of reasons. It could be because when you're doing this, there's reflexes that go to your spinal cord, because right now you're making lactate, you're making hydrogen ions, you're making all these metabolites, and there's receptors in there saying that there's all these chemicals. That must mean this leg is tired. And you send that signal up to your brain. And because of that, that has a generalized response to your whole body. And when you try to do something with the other leg, then the central nervous system has been tired from this. And when you try to recruit all the fibers you can over here, it can't do it as well because you tired this leg. Another theory is psychology. So it's called the strength energy model, which means you are focusing really hard for 30 seconds. And so you focus, and then we said stop. And then if we ask you to do the other leg, you go, oh shit, I gotta do another 30 seconds of concentration. And if you can't focus as well, then you won't be able to push out. We could do the same thing. We could have you do a math test, really tough math test, and test you before the math test and after the math test, and your legs would be tired from the math test. You say, well, how could you do that? Well, again, because you gotta focus. If we only asked you to do like a 3-second contraction, it wouldn't have any effect, because you wouldn't have to focus. You say, okay, let's do it, boom, 3 seconds, it's done. But if I ask you to hold it for 30 seconds, I guarantee you give you a math test, and you wouldn't be able to do it as well on your legs after your math test. So a lot of reflexive unconscious things going on, as well as psychological things going on. All right, we'll get you out of that. Okay, we'll do one more thing. We'll have you do a jump. So are we close enough to be able to pull this?
So would you say that before, like, let's say like cycling, like if there was a race before it, would you say to like have the person watch like a couple of cycling videos before the actual race and so on, and to like plan it out? And
yeah, certainly. In terms of the arousal level, if you watch somebody with a really good performance psychologically, that should arouse you, which should affect your output of the muscles.
Okay.
In terms of motor control, especially let's say you're doing something that takes a lot of coordination, like tennis, squash, or whatever, and then you watch some videos of people doing it properly, that will imprint as well, and also affect your performance too.
If I don't want to outperform him, I just have to watch him do something and then think about doing better.
If you were bigger than him. Right now, I think he might have an advantage on you. But if you were the same size, then it could help. Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Can you reach over there? Can you stand on that gray platform? This is our force platform. So this measures reaction forces. And so with this, we'll look at jump performance, whether it's a counter movement jump, which is that kind of jump, or we could do drop jumps and have them drop down and do a jump. And then we can look at your jump height. On a drop jump, we can look at your time on the plate. Because what's really important is if you're a sprinter, you can be the strongest person in the world, but if you're on the ground for a long period of time, sprinters don't look like this. They get to go, they hit, they go. So what we want to look at is contact time and jump height. And the greatest athletes are the ones that have the greatest jump heights in the shortest period of time, in terms of sprinters, jumpers, etc. Now you could be, for instance, a shot putter, and then you wouldn't need such short contact time because you want to express that force for a long period of time over the circle. But we can use these tests to identify young athletes, or again, to see how fit some people are. So would you hold this one? And then when we ask you to, we just want you to do a counter movement jump. So just bend down, your typical basketball jump or whatever you want to call it. Are you ready? Yep.
I'll press start again, and then you press start.
Okay. You tell me when, and I'll tell you when. You set?
Yes.
I'm ready?
Yeah. Go.
Ready and go. Okay. That's all we need. Ah!
Okay.
Okay, let's do it one more time. We lost it.
Yes. Ready.
Okay, go again. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's just grab us there. I'm gonna go here. Okay. And do we have anything there to see? So what we've got here, so this time the force plate data is sent to this computer, and then you see the reaction forces. I've got the electrical activity of the muscle here. And what we'll normally do is we'll synchronize it. So when we go back, we can know exactly when you started. So what would have happened here is that you would have gone down, all right? So the first part here would have been what's called your eccentric contraction. Eccentric is when you're going down, and when you're doing an eccentric contraction, you don't need as many motor units as when you're going up. So you'll see you went down, and then this is when you would have gone up. So you had a burst through for the concentric phase, and then you were in the air, so your legs are straight, so you're still contracting, but what also, so that's why there's not as much activity here. And then this would have been your flight phase, and then this would have been your landing phase. And again, your landing phase is eccentric, so then you got less activity. That's showing up?
No, we can't see.
Can't see it?
Right now.
Okay, all you see is just a tracing that goes up, flat, and goes back up again. And then we can calculate, say, the jump height, the contact time. And we can also look at a bit of drop jump. We can look at what's called the anticipatory response. So if I had you on one of those platforms and had you drop down, what you would do is you would turn on your muscles before you hit the ground in anticipation of hitting the ground. And so again, a good athlete will turn them on sooner and harder in order to stiffen up the system. And when the system is more stiff, you act more like a suspension. And you take off like a stiff spring. You want to be a stiff spring as an athlete. You don't want to be a very loose spring. So, and we can see that as well. So, can't really tell whether you're a great athlete. So, do you play sports?
Yeah.
And what do you do?
Hockey, basketball.
Hockey, basketball. Pardon?
And everything else is close to mainland.
Oh yeah. All right. So,
Are you
We-
doing your own? Safe?
no, no, particularly. That's just to measure the height. So you go up and I'll tell you how high you jump. I wouldn't want to embarrass you if I jumped higher than you. So, well, and you can keep those souvenirs if you want. All right. So that's our demonstration.
Nice,
Any
nice.
questions? So we'll grab your email. Sure. If you want to be, are you looking for any more subjects?
Not currently, but we will.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, we will be. So we have three
This
subjects.
is James Young, one of our grad students. So he's the one that I was telling you about with the looking at the excitability of the motor neuron with the rollers. So he's doing that. But we're also doing some more studies where we're doing more roller studies and some other jumping studies, etc. So we can definitely use you all.
So what would the EMG look like for a pull-up, say?
It would look very similar to what you saw when he was doing this. So on the pull-up, you'd be what's called a concentric phase. So you'd have the larger burst of EMG there, and then you have a smaller burst on the way down. Because on the way down, you've got, well, we have to go into physiology, but the muscle is joined by these bridges, kind of, and on the way up, the bridges have to join and release and join, and the muscle has to shorten. And then your tendons are loose when you first start, so you have to take up your tendon and make it stiff. But on the way down, the tendon is already stiff, so you don't need as much energy because the whole system is already tight. And then those cross bridges, they still have to release and go, but they're under more tension as well. So it's kind of like saying to yourself, if I've got a tight spring, then I've got more energy in that tight spring than if I have a loose spring. I have a loose spring when I shorten the muscle. So again, you'd see the opposite of this. This would be going up, and that would be going down.
No.
No? All right. Well, thanks for coming. Let's get your email addresses so we can get them back.
My email?
No, their email
Oh,
address.
okay.
I know your email address.
So let's see.
You have a pen?